Hello, my name is Tylluan Penry. I'm a solitary pagan witch. I'm an author and the founder of the Wolf and Howl Press. Now today's talk has the rather unlikely theme of memory within the earth. Now, as a pagan, we have an interesting relationship with nature and what we call Mother Earth. I don't say that every pagan recognises Mother Earth. There are going to be some who prefer Father Sky. That's fair enough. But for those who do feel drawn to Mother Earth, then I think this little talk might be helpful. Something you often find as you start to look around you is that certain places have a certain feel to them. Now, this has all sorts of implications, from ghosts and spirits to local history. In fact, you will often find, if you go through books on local history or old maps, you will often find that certain areas seem to lend themselves to certain things. In fact, when Anglo-Saxon England was undergoing its conversion, which was 6th, 7th century CE, when it was undergoing conversion, there was a deliberate policy to build churches on top of pagan or heathen sacred sites. And you could say, well, this meant that it stopped people going somewhere else. It took choice away because it obliterated what had been there before. And I think there's some truth in that. But I think there was also an element where an aura of sanctity builds up around an area which is used for worship. And therefore, it's easy to build something similar in the same place. If you travel abroad and you go to places like temples or mosques, it is impossible not to be moved by this aura of sanctity. Even though their spiritual path is quite different from ours, you still pick up this feeling of devotion, this feeling of reaching out to some higher power. And I think that the earth actually exhibits these tendencies in many forms. It's not just about sacred sites. I think there are sites which have certain connotations, certain associations, and when we go out, we sometimes become irrationally aware of them. You get a feeling of coldness, you get a feeling of certain things that have gone on that site, and I always joke about a local roofing depot, and whenever I go past on the bus, I have this terrible irrational urge to get out and perform some sort of blessing ceremony in its yard. Now, I don't know what this is, but I think this is some kind of response to something, perhaps originally, thousands of years ago, it was a sacred site. And we have to remember that the modern religions of the world, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, they are all within the last, say, 5,000 years, and some are much younger than that. But what about what went before? Now, up above my home, you can't see it from here, but if you sort of imagine going behind me and up and over that way, there is a very ancient cairn on the mountainside. I've never been up there. I've seen it on maps, but I've never actually been up and seen it. But we do know that hilltops, mountaintops, were sacred places. And we do know that people would put up standing stones and things, and cairns in this case, because they brought people closer to the sky. And so perhaps you would say that the worship of sky gods, people like Thor, that would be particularly popular on a high site. But of course it's not just sky gods. I mean, if you go higher, you're up above the land, you're on the very pinnacle of it. Anyway, I found this stone. Now, you're not going to be able to see it terribly well on the video, But it's an ordinary little stone. It's been darkened all around, and there's this wonderful terracotta coloured, I don't know what you'd say, it's like an insert. It's almost like the equivalent of enamelling, except it's quite rough. And you can read more about that over on my blog, and I'll post a link on the About section below this video. But anyway, I found this out in my garden. And the reason I mention it is because this particular stone has an uncanny resemblance to what they call the bison men in the French cave paintings. Les Trois Frères, where you have the sorcerer and the bison men with the bow drill. And there is a theory that possibly, you know, what the bison men were carrying might have been some kind of double flute or syrinx, but also that it could have been a bow, very small one, used for starting fire. Now, if that is true, the theory goes, these bison men, these figures, may have been these sort of masters of fire. Not quite shaman, but something else. Masters of fire. And that they were perhaps the precursors of the blacksmithing gods, people like Hephaestus, Vulcan, Wayland Smith. And what they had in common, of course, not only were they blacksmiths, but they were also all lame, which I find very interesting. I wonder why. We've lost that bit of the legend, the reasoning behind it all. I mean, we know why Wayland was crippled deliberately, but it is an interesting theory. Why would they all have this in common? There is some ancestral memory that we need to recover. But the funny thing, and the reason I mention this, because we're talking about memories of the land, is that when we came here, and it was a very long story about how we came to this house, but everything seemed to be in our favour to get us here, we brought with us an old anvil, very, very large, and it's out in the garden. But the funny thing is that the people who lived here before us, we discovered, also had an anvil in the same place out in the garden. Now, to me, and you feel free to totally disbelieve it, but to me, I think that shows a remembrance of place, that there is something in this place with its stone, with the bison man, the master of fire, with its anvils. I think there is something in this place that has, for millennia, been associated with fire and fire gods. It's just a thought, but these are the things, these little thoughts, these little niggles, they send us off on the most amazing spiritual, emotional and intellectual quests to find out more. And this is what real spirituality is all about. It's the great work. Find out more. And you know the old saying, minds are like umbrellas. They work best when they're open. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little chat. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.